is fading, draw near, and my time has come. Still my soul sing your praise, unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Praise the Lord. The Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before. Oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. Oh, I worship Your holy name. Lord, I worship Your holy name. Yes, thank you for listening to that. Thank you for listening to that. I'm looking for my other phone. Do forgive me. Okay, I found it here. Yes. What am I going to talk about today? I had a session that I did I think last year. Yeah, last year, sometime about when a clergy died, and what took place and how we go about it. It was drawn to my attention today because I really love that topic. So someone flashed me that topic again, and I really would love to emphasize more on that. I was hoping that I would have gotten some more leaders who were ready to interact with me on that topic, but I never got around to having someone who was willing to really come on the program with me and to really discuss about this. But it doesn't say it bothers me. The fact is that I am really there's a concern. There's a concern towards this. And today I just want to go through a bit of it, and also to see, I haven't got no notes before me. That means I am just coming off just rough edges. So do bear in mind that a lot of these stuff that we read via and it can be true, and it can come off as if we are copying other people's work, wherein I realize that there's a lot of copyright or fact checkers out there. So I'm gonna roughly go through a few things via the net also, but I want us to really look back on things that we leaders, for that matters, that when a clergy dies, that clergy belongs to your communion. I'm going to put them all in word: your communion, your churches, your organization. What do? How do you go about it? Do not mimic the facts of anything that is just another man or something like that. No. We're looking at aspect wherein that is the church responsible for that person or the family of the deceased. And we these are some of the things we want to really go through and talk about, and give me a second here, and then and to discuss, in terms of how do we manage. I remember back saying that, and I have my the Archbishop, the Patriarch of the Apostolic Communion of Churches, and he spoke on some things. If those of you remember, I know a lot forget things when they're not hearing it regularly. It's not something we would say we're gossiping about, or so that you can, we tend to carry the gossip faster and keep the gossip faster in our heads than the publication itself that is terms truth. And we have this idolatry in us that, oh yes, because they say it must be true. It's not all the time. So the Bible allows us to understand where two or three, but it said touching anything concerning him. He's in our midst. And therefore we tend to follow on. And we tend to divert attention, and we tend to do a lot of stuff, but it drawn on me that a lot of us don't really want to hear the truth. It drawn on me that a lot of us really don't like the truth. Once it is the truth, the facts, the real truth, we have a problem with it. We have a problem with it. We have a problem with it. And to bury, we bury dead. One would say, oh, we bury dead every day. Yes, we bury dead. Yesterday we are burying our fathers, our mothers, our loved ones, or whosoever. We are burying dead. We are burying even people that we don't know. That's all true. It's all true. But the Bible have a condition. The Bible have a condition for the leaders. Oh yes, did you not know? Yes, they were buried among their fathers. The Bible has that condition. Abraham was buried among the fathers. Moses, we know that was left over another part over the river there. He didn't go further over There's a condition. They were taken back to a certain places and they were buried among the fathers, not their fathers, the fathers. That means those who served, those who were those leaders that have governed in the right and proper manner. And they were buried among. They were taken up even from places and were brought to a special place to be buried. We know that they are, and I agree that a lot of you may or may not know that there are different types of cemeteries, and there are different spaces where people are buried in cemeteries. And for those who follow me, they will realize that last year I went to a funeral of a young lady that got buried here. So going on a cemetery to look how people are buried, maybe there's a spot reserved for a particular family. So it's one died, they were placed there, and the lineage goes up. There are family plots and there are government lands, and when I say government lands, you got to pay to bury your dead there. Maybe there are village cemeteries where the people of that village are buried there. It's still a plot of land. But we're talking about the clergymen and women of the church. Maybe sometimes not even the local church, but we are putting all in one terms. Clergymen and women who laid to rest, and then they are buried. You see the terms I use? They are laid to rest and then buried. Laying to rest means that they slept off, or they were, who knows how they died. And now the church has taken responsibility and laid them to rest. That means they have dug a special place for them. They performed a certain traditional ceremony and they buried them. So they are laid to rest and they buried them. And I think I use the terms right. So we're talking about, when the clergy buried. It was I'm not talking about the over spectacular kinds of funerals where You see dancing that you don't understand what going on or where going on. I'm talking about they having a ceremony for the pastor, the lay pastor, the clergyman, maybe even the deacon, the elder, the evangelist, and as we say, the prophets, the priests, and so. So I am asking this question. I want to ask it again. If someone out there and wants to come on the program, send me first a text, and then I look at it, and then I'll allow you to come in on the program, or you send an invitation that you would like to discuss about this. How do we bury them? Where are they supposed to bury? Who responsible for their burials? Is it the church or the family? Is it the states or the family? Is it the states and the church? And such things I want us to really come to terms with. Not just me adding my own opinion of how it ought to be, but how we would love to be them to be placed and things like that. So we tend to look at all these things in some sort of light sometimes, and we have weird ideas. We do not understand. And, you know, a lot of times, I want to use a man or woman of God terms, a clergyman, a priest then died, and then the family are left drooling because they are not able to bury the dead. And therefore, you know, some would say he has been serving in that church for so long, and now the family are left with the corpse, or, you know, the body, if you want to use it in that term. So these are some of the things I want us to really discuss now, and to see wherein we can stand on this neutral ground, you know, and to figure out how to make a difference. You see, there's so many things that everybody wants equal right for. And oh, yes, we agree that many of us who are on the clergy board or sitting there assigning ourselves to be clergymen and women, we are not even qualified to be there. But the church that they are in have lifted them up. Sometimes I believe that they are lifted up too high, and forgetting that they can slide, slip, drop, fall, drop down, drop off the chair anyway, and just drop down like that. And so I am asking this question out there. If you have your questions, send them in. You know, how do we bury our clergy men and women? Do the women get the same kind of burial as the men? Oh my God. Do the young men get the same kind of burial rights as the older men, even though they are all clergy? And what difference does the top tier churches, I won't call no name, how do they bury their dead consist to the one, or compared to the ones that are not in the bureaucratic parts of things? How does it goes? And if somebody have ever buried a pastor before, a priest, a bishop, and a clergyman, a clergywoman, and you have an idea of how, you know, instead of I'm just spreading my wings and talking, I'd love to hear about it, you know. I've seen men being buried, but it's still good to know what others have to put into this. You know, the burying a clergy person, it has to do with how they serve. It's sort of a respect for that person. Their servitude should not be honored in death, but there should be something that shows that they have served. You know, where do you lay them? And, you know, Or do you lay them just anywhere? Allow them to stay on the ice for too long? And how do we do that? Not seeing anyone writing, maybe on this phone I can't see any persons. I have no idea. But I'm just, I saw one person in. I just love to know your report. You can send me on my WhatsApp or my messenger, and I could read the comment here and try as much to see how we can answer it, this morning here. There's a Bible scripture that comes up here. It says, "Albeit when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whosoever shall hear." It's John 16:13. I want to speak the truth to everybody that comes my way. I don't want to be dangling around anywhere, How do we bury the clergymen, and the clergywomen? So we just put one word, the clerics, How do we bury them? How do we bury them? I'm still waiting to see if there's anyone who wants to put an input. There's so many different ways that people have seen, in many Christian tradition, ordained clergy are traditional, buried in the opposite orientations. Is that how you bury your clergy? All these kinds of things you got to know. It's very important that you know stuff and what they do, and we have to know why they did it that way and all this kind of thing. And their coffin carried likewise, so that at the general resurrection they may be out with their facing, and ready to minister to their people. That's the tradition that has said then, So they were buried. It is said that when you bury sunrise to sunset. And you bury before 6 o'clock in the evening. That means funerals are finished by 5:45 the latest. And so I need to know if that's how you also believe, and how early in the morning can we bury the dead. I realize that some church take like 10 hours to commemorate the body. Not just the clergy, I'm just generally speaking that one. They take so long. They dance, they march. This group comes up, that group comes up. They have a whole lot of theatrical things going on around it. And at the same time, they're saying that the dead must rest in peace. They make this whole lot of luxurious sepulchres, casket, coffins, this so many things that you wonder to yourself, yes, they want to put the person down in style. The person has their own money. All these kind of things are being said. Nobody can say what is right and what is not wrong there. But as for me, I would say that it's too much elaboration on a dead. And then we ask, how do we bury the priest now? You see. So we have this extensive things. I see they put them up in chair. I've seen ones that they open the casket open, they took out the corpse. They put the corpse in a chair. He sat there in his apparels and stuff like that. And then, like I'm reading here, the service in the church is that how you bury a priest. The hymns for the departed with refrain, "Blessed are you, O God, teach me your commandment." And there are a few ritual peculiarities in a priest's funeral. oil from the shrine lamp is poured upon the face before he is buried, and his face is once again covered with the hair. What is the hair? That's like a veil or something of that sort, or whatever they put on it. And then they ask, now, how is a bishop buried? Many graves are built and marked with inscription. The old church, from what I gathered on the island where I came from, a lot of the old church, the priests of those parish, they were buried inside the church. And even on the church, on the outer court of the church, that means your churchyard, they were buried there. And one could see the inscription, the headstones, and you could see how many years they have lived and died. So you could go back and forth to realize, wow, this man has sitting like this body, or this no longer body, the skeletons, even the casket had gone back to be groundworks. If you understand what I mean, that means it's no longer there, and the skeleton is laid there, because human bones is not so easily dissolved in the ground, or it doesn't dissolve at all. So the bones are left there for years, and maybe you look at the inscription and they're buried for 50, 70, 100 years. And if one at the time and not so scared like myself is to walk through a cemetery and to look on the stones and would have an idea where a clergy or a priest or a bishop, a deacon, an elder have been buried for quite a long time, a prophet, an evangelist have been buried for, let's say, centuries over. And you gone there, you could see the inscription if it's not a dirt grave, because back in those eras, a lot were buried just pure dirt. So those cannot be found anymore. And the ones that were later accounted for, the inscriptions are there, and you can see how long he had lived. You see when he was born and when the person died. So many graves were built and marked by inscription. In Christian times, an early tradition was developed by burying martyrs in the basement of the church, as I said before, known as a catacomb, and of burying diocesan bishops inside their cathedral. So you see, they were buried inside the church. Nowadays, people say, oh, you can't bury him inside the church. But that was where they were buried. A lot of these old cathedrals, a lot of these old monasteries, they were buried inside there, and you may be walking on ancient relics. Like for saying in Rome, in the basement of St. Peter's or other buildings in Rome, they were buried under. And these monuments, as one would call them, even though we are looking at them from and say this is a church building, these monuments are considered at times to be protected by the states, and over the years they are there. Some have been run down and need modernization, that's true, but because of the materials that built it in ancient days, it stays erected even till now. It's not like the glass houses that we build today to live in, and therefore they were buried there, and we walked on a lot of these graves without even having a very ideas that they were buried there inside. So some of these things let me just say, the smaller churches don't teach. They just say, oh, a dead is a dead. So when the man bury, his family come and they cry, they mourn, they wail, they do dancing. Sometimes I keep on asking myself, if he died and he died in Christ, good afternoon, Evangelist McPhee. You know, and how do we, good evening, now one of them we have, isn't that true? We are all the way over this side. So how do we cry when we said that they are buried in the Lord? Yes, I remember vividly when my dad, I didn't see when he died. I was not in the island when he died. I'd never visited the church that he was churched, but when he came to the family plot to be laid, I thought to myself I would not shed any tears. But the one reason why the tears fall from my eyes was the fact that I didn't get to speak to him in the last moment of his right. And the tears because I knew then that I was missing him. And I must honestly say that particular day when my dad was laid, even though he had died already, laid that day, I felt a part of me. I felt a part of me literally being locked in the grave. When they covered back the casket, they opened it for those of us who did not see his face could see him, and they laid they sink the casket down into that hole. And literally that day I knew exactly that something in me left me. I don't know if other folks who have lost loved ones, that is, something left me. And what left me that day was a fear because I had this fear growing up that what if my loved one died? I remember when my reverend then died, and he's buried inside the compound where the church is there and his home is there. And too many times when I have to go into on the compound, I would walk literally nearest to the church because of that fear and enter to the house. If nobody was in the living room with me, I would not stay in the living room. I'd literally come back to the veranda, or what we call today in Europe, balcony. And I would stay there. But when my dad died many years later, something left. Something went away. Something that had almost crippled my life for years, because I keep on saying, what if that, what if would that. But when my dad died that day, I realized I touched him. I put my hands on him. I wanted to kiss my dad that day, but I knew that he was not in that body no longer. So these are some of the aspects we are saying that the church need to teach, not shying away from death. That is inevitable. It is something that is, it has been there. It is appointed. It is appointed unto man. So therefore we can't shun this away and don't say anything about that in the church. Because when a loved one died, and you are in the said church, and the church has never taught you how to overcome the grief and the barriers and the pains and the traumas and the depression and the anxiety and the fear, you won't understand how to. Nobody can teach you how not to miss a loved one, but at least you will understand it better. We sing songs like we will understand it better by and by. We sing songs like, we will meet them again and all this kind of thing. But when the person died, that's when you start to realize now that something touched you extraordinary. Yes. And therefore we need to teach these things. We're talking about burying a bishop, a clergyman, what we call woman, clergyman, clergywoman. I'm not using the term man and woman of God. So if anybody is offended by that, they can continue keeping that. I'm talking about the man that stands in the office of the bishopric, the woman that stands in the office of the bishopric, the one that is called himself or called to be the prophet of the nation, the elders who are there to assist and to preach and to exegete the scriptures. I'm talking about those who are in the servitude of the Lord, whether you are the handmaid of God or you are the servant of God. I hope somebody get that. So I'm talking about how do we bury them, even though I'm going around to show you all the ways and how other people go about funerals and all this, and how do we get away from and shun that kind of things when we bury those who are servant and handmaid of the Lord. Here is an article I'm reading. I'm just touching a surface of a lot of things. I'm not going into all these things. However, these days it is acceptable for Catholics to be cremated. That said that most churches prefer that the body be presented at a funeral mass, and meaning that cremation should occur after the funeral mass. So thus, therefore, they're saying that according to the Catholics, that the body will be shown for the masses to see, to remember their bishops, in that way of seeing him. But after then, the body will be cremated, turned to ashes, and put in a horn. It's a small little thing, and then they would place that in a place or put it in the ground. Remains should be buried into the ground, or if they want to put it at sea, or entombed, or a columbarium, and should not be scattered. So does the local church would consider such things to do with the body of their priests when he or she is laid? When they bury the priests, or normally the Catholics when they bury someone from that organization, they use the chalice, and they have another thing that is sprinkle the water over the grave. So do the local churches set up a way how to bury their priests, how to bury their women or men priests, and how do they go about it? What are the rights? Who, as I said before, who stands the entire ceremonial in the terms of monetary funds? Is it the church or the family? And does the family as a say for the body? If the family really decided that they would love to have their loved one to put to rest, do the family has that right? I'm just trusting out the question out there for all of us, because I realize that we are lost in a lot of things. We know that the funeral parlors, the hospitals, if they do an autopsy on the body and all that kind of stuff, there are funds, monetary funds, not just sitting down and crying and wailing and bawling out our tears and getting our body steroid with weakness and all that kind of stuff. No, they are funds that is needed. At the local church, have they come to a place where that they have a burial fund wherein they can say over the years, or do they count it that because the person or the family may not have been paying enough tithes and offering, or the person was not that relevant to the church, even though he or she was there, that the church can't come up with the money and all this kind of stuff. It's a sad situation, but it's a fact, and several excavations should have shown the priest being buried with a chalice. I don't know why they would put the chalice in the casket with the priest, and it symbolized the priest's important role in the Eucharist or the Eucharisty or the communion or the Lord's Supper, as it is being said, or the sacrament of communion, and in some instances priests are buried with the chalice and a pattern. The chalice and the pattern is that what holds the bread, and the chalice is what holds the wine. I have no idea why they would bury the priest with that, but over the years traditions have changed from one thing to the other. And not just that. I am asking the question today, and I'm asking the question for those who are listening, who have more insight into the burial of a priest. And when I use the term priest, I use the term priest because of the priesthood that the Bible speaks about. But I'm talking about bishop, lay pastors, the deacon, the elders, the archbishop, both male and female. Yeah, so this is what I'm really emphasizing on. Are some of these things needful, or do we just wrap them in satin cloths and lay them down in a casket? Do we have to really put them out or showcasing them like they are some flowers that is gone? Do we have to broadcast them out there? Do we have to put them up for the world to see? While those bodies are there, yes, they are they are embalmed, but is there anything that will lead these bodies that will affect those in a gathered room looking at the corpse standing there, sitting there, or anything like that? Yes, when one is in a casket, how long does the body stays now that it's come off the ice and it's embalmed and lie there? How long can the body allowed to be stayed there so that 50,000 people, 30 people, 40, 70,000 people can be looking at that body before, and then having the body, as I see in one place where they parade the body around and around and around before the body is laid. Is that how we do priests also? I need to know. Which way is a priest buried? This is something I had said before. They said when an ordained priest, however, are buried, they face west. I wonder how many people knows that. You face them west. At least that's what the medieval Catholic practice is. And has survived hundreds of years. Most often practiced by traditional communities today. But why? As the Poiss tradition old, at the last judgment, the laity would raise to meet the Son of God in the east. So you're laid to the west to rise in the east. Wow. You know, these are some of the things I'm telling you. We need a whole class to begin to dig out, to ask the question why, to see how long this tradition was. And does it mean that all the churches, whether, you see, this is the point where I'm going to mess up some folks now. These are all clergy. Whether you say you are the Catholic priest, the Protestant priest, the Orthodox priest, the normal Pentecostal, charismatic priest, bishop, you call yourself, you're all priests, as said. You know, so therefore, are we all to be laid in the same manner from the west to the east? When you rise, you face the east. Or when you lay in the east to rise in the west. There are a lot of these things that we all need to know. And, you know, many times a lot of people don't know which direction even to bury the dead. They don't even know how to carry the dead. You know, so they're saying here in this, what I'm reading, is that when the time comes, we the laity are buried facing the east. Ordained priests, however, are buried facing the west. So one is faced to the east because they are ordained, and then the laity, the laity face to the east, and the ordained are faced to the west. You see this little controversy there. We need to come with something where we can all agree on, at least, you know. And then it say that the priests, however, rise up facing the west to see their congregation, right, you know, and be held accountable for how well they steward their flocks. I would believe that one, though. I believe that one. You are facing your flocks because you are set to govern them. The word overseer, you are to govern them. So even in death, and when you rise again, you arise with the same thing. You die, so you're sleeping, you're laid there. You can't govern them in your sleep, but when you rise again, you're held accountable before the Lord. Before the mighty throne, you are held accountable for how you governed, overseer. Teach them how you have led them during your time on earth. You know, there are two men here in southern France, Bishop Gallimore Durand, this gentleman here. He said that in the end of the 13th century, a man ought to so be buried that while his head lie to the west, his feet are turned to the east. For thus he pray it were by his very position and such that he is already to hasten towards the west, from the west to the east. Not quite sure how that was, but that's someone who comes up with that theory. What I'm trying to say to us here is that I realize that in Judaism they are buried in a certain plot. In the Muslimic tradition, they want to be buried in a certain spot. They don't want to mix because they have their own tradition. In the Orthodox, I suppose, they do the same. Now we're talking about the local diocese that we have over the years. Some have owned it ourselves and said, it is my church. Some have said it's my communion. And we label it some way. I am not there to say anything about that. So how do you now plan on, are you planning on taking a sheet out of the Judaism, Muslimic, Orthodox? How are you planning on laying your clergy when they are laid? We thought about that. Do they go back to their family home to be buried at the cost of their loved ones? Being the laity or the bishop or in the ministry that is, what compensation or what is handed over to the wife of the said or the husband of the said? In the service, that's saying that he laid down all of his life works for the ministry. And what, not saying it has to be money, but what does it as, what does the family of this man or woman receive after being in service for that length of time that they have served faithfully? I know there are a lot of priests, I'm just using the one term, priests, who have been charlatans, sorcerers, and they have manifest themselves in different ways, but their people have called them daddy and called them mommy. So I'm still asking everyone, how do you go about laying them down when their time has come? You know, thank you. I say, you know, because to be honest, I strongly believe in the latter and also in the former. When back in the days when Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all these men, let me just put it like this, my love terms that I love to use, patriarch, prophets, and kings, they were buried in a manner that was befitting them according to their leadership qualities. They were laid down. It even said that Deborah, in her times when she was buried, after she died, I am unalive. Yes, yes, I'm alive. Yeah, Or okay. So after she had served and then she died, the Bible explained that Deborah was buried among those who was servants of God. She wasn't buried in a separate place. So a lot of you are jumping over the moon by trying to, say things that you don't even look up and say it. In the time the Bible says she was a judge. And she ruled, she judged Israel during that time. And then when she died, she was laid. She wasn't buried in a separate place, as one would think. She was laid among the men because she was also serving. She was an handmaid of God. You see, so she served, and then she was laid just like the men were laid. She wasn't dashed anywhere. So I'm asking this question, and I know a lot of clergy will be listening this if they choose to. You understand? I know if it was a man horn, a lot of men would have growled in and clocks in and started putting their quotation and their apostrophes and their commonwealth things what they want to put in. But you see, but it concerns them, and therefore I won't pull back myself and not saying it. Where will they bury you? Who will take up the responsibility? Has your church enough inheritance to bury the dead, which is you or others, when they are laid? Do they have to make a GoFundMe to lay you down when you pass by? Is there a fund that is set, that is able to come together to say that we're going to lay down this person at that place? Is this a set place where other clerics can be also laid when their time has come? Or is that a special land that they have that is set aside by their family to bury you, so their family can be buried together? Does the clergy and his wife bury at the same place? In all like that? We want to know. Are you from a country or a tribe or a system that says that while the woman is alive, she's for the family, but when she is laid, the family has to take back the corpse? Oh yes, it is happening. I don't have to be at the place to see, but I know that it's happening. While the person is alive, they are welcome into the family, but when the person died, if the person died after the man or before the man, the corpse would go back to where they had paid the dowry for. You see, so all of this, a lot of you have to put into consideration. How strong is the church that you're going then? Let me just say church that you're going. How strong it is to lay you down. Are they in a position that when the years have passed by and you have gone to rest, or you lay down or you sit down, then they can say, yes, we, the church, are strong enough to lay you down, and the families don't have to be begging for GoFundMe, credit funding, take on a loan. They're walking around with the pots and the pans to ask for funds to lay you down, or to say, oh, we can only commemorate the funeral, but the family has to take up the responsibility of bringing you under the grave. Too many times we have this ideas. You know, it's one thing to be a leader of a congregation, a communion, a monastery. You name the facts, it's there, you know. So therefore we have to be able to tell others that, and to show others that the church cares. The church is there. The church is not just standing there doormat. The church is ready to stand with not just the members, even though I've seen a lot of members have to be asking for help, but I'm talking about that the church is there to stand its ground and to help to lay them down. I agree that foreign ministers at times may never be able to get the same, you know, as those who live in their own land. But then again, it's for everybody. When the priest died in your land, when the priest died in a foreign land, where do we put the priests? Where do we put them to lie down? How do we go about it? When they're out there on the missionary field, when they're out there because they have traveled and they are out there, who is responsible for them? If you have your own communion and you decided to go somewhere and you fall, you lay down. Yes, for those who govern only their own communion themselves, they are the head and they are the tails. When you are laid, who lay you down? Well, you know, your family, or you ask for the church, the ministry, the communion, the monastery to put you down? Is it in your constitution that when you are laid, who is responsible for what and who will do what? Have you set your church in a way that after you have laid with your forefathers or your foreparents, that there is no controversial thing going on in your ministry that nobody knows, or it takes others unaware and they don't even know if they're inside and they are out? These are some of the things I'm trying to put to everyone out there who are laity, as I said before, in all avenues of the church, while in the leadership position. You know, how do we deal with them? How do we deal with our people? How do we show them that we care? And when they have laid, how do we show them that we indeed care? We care for their soul in life, but do we care for their body in death? I strongly believe that if you're truly a member of a diocese for years, you pay your tithes, and when you get to a point that you don't have the tithes again to pay because financial stagnation, I strongly believe at times that the church should be able to assist in a way, but then again, a lot of the church are poor as poor can be. And then we ask ourselves again, how many people in the church literally tithe? Yes, I know people said the tithes have gone into Lamborghini and Chevrolet and aeroplanes and big houses and lands and properties that the congregant have no saying over. Yeah, but then we have to bring somebody to a point where we know what we signed on the documents, and we have to know what's in the constitution of the church and how is the pastor going to be laid down when his time comes. If you're employed by a church, that means you're an employee. That means you have a contract. And in your contract, there are subsidizers that may be set for reduction from your salary, whether it's a yearly salary or a monthly salary. And out of that, there ought to be something that is reductible. A lot of leaders want to be in a communion. They want to be in a diocese, but they don't want to be a part when it comes to giving. They rather be asking to receive. They become receivers, and they don't know that antennas give out and also receive. And then if they have somebody in their diocese, they're died, they want the top tiers, as they would have looked at it, to be able to support them, to bury that dead. So these are a lot of the structures that the church is lacking in the sense that you have no meetings where you are. I don't say on a Sunday where you're out to preach. That's when you come in with lectures. You ought to have meetings. Otherwise, from your midweek service, you ought to have meetings where these are put on the board, on the table, stretch across the table, for everybody, puts in writing, where everybody can have their eyes to read it. They can read to know exactly where they stand in an organization. I even sometimes wonder why we have to use the word organization for a church. But then again, everybody ought to be organized, you see. And it has to be there. You can't say you're a leader and you don't know. Yes, we agree. We're out there on the mission field. We're out there to work, to serve the Lord with all our heart. We're out there to go from places to places, to allow the good of God to be seen, to lay hands, to touch lives, and to help them whatever they are into. But the church has to be more than just that. The body of Christ is more than just that. It's not just food and it's not just eating and drinking. No. It has a lot inside it. I was explaining to somebody the reason why I didn't put the word church, even though the tabernacle means church, and I put ministries, because I want to more focus on the functions within the body. The functions, what comes in those functions. How do we go about? Even though I'm getting tired of some folks now in that function, because why I am realizing now that a lot of us, we like to have but not to give, you know, and it's true. I won't lie. I'm telling the fact truth. I made up my mind a long time ago that, you know, and the Bible allows me too long to understand, when thou hast vowest to vow unto God, defer not to pay that vow. It's rather you have never vowed at all. And I think life in itself is a vow. It's a vow how you are going forward each day. There were times when you did not understand the vows, and things happen, but along the mistakes of your journey, you ought to have learned that your vow is still there for you to fulfill. And that's why I'm so concerned about how we lay them to rest when they have faithfully served. Oh yes, when the faithful have served, even in death, we ought to recompense them. Even in death. You see, a ceremonial cord and a cross, it might seem insignificant, but it shows a position wherein you're sitting in an office. And it's the same way it stands in that same position when you are laid to rest. We agree that there are fakes and there are fables, there are atrocities that hides itself behind so many cloaks, that stands there and looks genuinely humanly. And then you see, anything that you do for the Lord and it's done genuinely, it is shown genuinely. Once it is being tampered with, you start to see a different thing happening. The signs you will see unless you allow yourself to be blinded at all costs and all ways. If in your village you have a place where you say that, oh, we bury certain people there, and we bury certain people here, and we bury certain people there, find a spot to bury your clergyman and your clergywoman. Stop having them all over the place like breeze. Lay them to rest, because that's what you got while they were serving you. They were bringing your soul to rest from that what has made it become violent and aggressive and full of ignorances. So when their time comes, lay them down to rest. Find your way. While you're there with them, know who they serve. So when you serve them, you know who they are. We walk around too much. We listen to so many things too much. Our heads are everywhere too much. Our thoughts end up being nowhere, and yet still we want to go somewhere. Too many times our stagnancy has barred us from having what we ought to have. And it caused by our own self. Every leader ought to teach at a particular time to their leaders, to their congregation, what it is Whether it's a parishioner. I know a lot don't use that word no more. A parishioner, which is someone from the congregation, is laid to rest, or it's the priest who is laid to rest. You got to find out. Don't wait till the last minute, because time waits on no man. But if you have everything documented, that's why we have the Bible today. If we have a protocol, we will know. Too many have waited too long, and then sickness, they are afraid to tell even their parishioner that they are sick. Too many have not seen the doctors for more than 2-3 years, and yet still they're in service. Because why? They don't have the funds to go to see the doctor. If you're a leader of a communion or a small parish church, and you have your adjutant, your co-pastor, your co-errand, how you name them, your deacons, your evangelists, and you got to know if they go to the doctor. You got to find out if they have gone to the doctor. And if because of low funding they can go and see the doctor because their health care, or some country have no health care, find a way how to get them to see a medical practitioner, doctor we call them. You can't have men or women working with you stressing the same way you stress, even though at times we think that we are the only ones stressing. But they have never seen the doctor, and you have. So when they fall short, you can't do anything for them. Families would have to come and bury them. We have leaders there, and even though they have congregation, and a lot of poor folks said there are tithes and offering coming into the storehouse. Too many leaders are and they have nothing for themselves. They never kept anything for themselves. You can see it on them. You can see it. But why a lot of folks don't see it? Because they're blinded. They only see a surface, and they can't see anymore. A lot of us, we claim that we know, we can know folks, but you stand beside that folks, or you listen to that folk, you have no discernment in spirit. So you see, you're empty. You hear the word, and you hear the word, and once they're not there, you're like the plant. They hear the word, but the fast as the wind comes, it blows you over. We got to know how to treat our clergy, men and women, those that have served us. Those that you know definitely that they have laid down everything before you, kept back nothing. We got to know how to bury them. Yes? Stop just dropping them in hole like this and walking away. A lot of men and women have buried, and nobody ever mentioned to say that their family has gotten a sup from anything. And their family are left struggling. And the church have turned their backs on them. I don't want to get anybody thinking that I'm thinking wild. But no, I'm thinking inside the box. And I'm thinking outside the box. I'm thinking, where do we stand when the time comes? After we have served, we have given our all. We have no extra money in our accounts. We'll take the last what we have and give to a congregant or a fellow clergyman, a woman, or somebody by the waysides, the byways and the edges. And we have nothing because we give with a willingness of heart. And we only hear the word thanks. And like 2 or 3 days or a month later, the said will be asking again. So you see the reason why I'm saying that a lot of you need to figure out a way out to bury your clergy when the time comes. Because a lot of you have gotten more than enough. But you're still greedy. And you don't care what happened to them. Because you say, oh, they're clergy. They're the clerics of the church. And too many times you've never even given a tithes and an offering. There's a lot of leaders out there that has never sowed into the church that has governed them or has even covered them on earth. They've never given back a dime. Even if they could, they choose not to. The Bible allows us to understand that they were buried among the fathers. And saying to every church, that's what you call yourself, every church. Start reshuffling your board and find out what you have on your table that is presentable before the congregation. Because your fables are not helping anybody. It's not even a chocolate that you put and till it's finished. It's time for all of us to really look back at what we're doing. Look back at what we're doing. Being outside of my home, my homeland, and living in a land where, let's just say I call my second home until God would choose otherwise, or if that's how it ought to be. It bothers me a lot. It bothers me. It bothers me in the fact that I said, if the Lord should call me home just now. I'm not worried the fact where I will lay, you know. No. I'm worried to the fact, what have I taught you? What have I taught you? How did I make his word plain to you? What have I given you that was rightly yours, that came from him? Jesus wants us to know the truth because he said the truth will set us free. From the beginning to the end, the truth will set us free. I want to stop here. But I want to say to every clergyman and woman out there, priests, bishop, naming them out, deacons, evangelists, prophets, even if you call yourself excellency, you govern the Lord's vineyard as you so say. Your husbandry in the Lord's vineyard. Teach your people the right thing. Teach them what is right. And stop allowing yourself to be a mockery in the eyes of God and leading God's people in the wrong direction. Let us be mindful. Let us be mindful of the road that we walked on. Let us be mindful of the journey, the place where He took us from. Because we know not exactly where we are going. We have something in mind. Oh yes, we all have heaven in view. But not all of us, I'm telling you, not all of us that call ourselves clergy, that call ourselves Christians, that call ourselves Orthodox and Jews and Muslims, we're not going anywhere. We're not going. Because our deeds are not right. We're teaching things that are disdainable. And you know it and I know it. Those who have walked this road and travailed and have set them face to heaven bound and know that God is watching them whether you are there or not. And they have put out themselves to take up that cross and to follow Christ. They are tired of hearing you murmur and complain and telling lies to the people of God. They're tired of you belittling the gospel of Christ. Teach the truth. And those who will hear the truth, they will know the truth, and the truth will set them free. My brothers and sisters, you've come a long way. A long way. And yet still your journey is not yet ended. You still got a little chance to make it right. I thank you all for listening, and I hope that this program is an enlightenment to you. I'll be back again on another day, and we want to discuss about ministering in a strange land. So those of you who are leaders and you're in a strange land and you are in leadership position in the church, I would love to hear from you before I do this program. So you can always inbox me if you're interested. Ministering in a strange land. The Lord be with us all. And out of Zurich here, I'm Archbishop Patricia Dieze. Before we close off, I have a book out there called Married to a Bishop. And I'd love everyone to get a copy of this book. I guarantee you that this thing will change your life. You're in ministry, whether you're a man or a woman, and you are the leader of your congregation, and you're married, your first husband or your first gentleman or your first lady, I want you to read this book. It's on Seller. I have it on my page. I want you to get a copy of this book and look into yourself when you have read it and tell me if everything what I've put in that book, if it's not true. God bless you all. The love of God, the grace of God, the peace of God, the tranquility of the Holy Spirit. Rest, remain, and abide with you. And as you go through the rest of your day, we are here in the late afternoon, going down to the evening. After it's evening, after 6. I want all of you to be joyful in the Lord and in the power of his might. We aim to please, but who are we pleasing? We aim to serve, but who are we serving? We aim to reach out to everyone across the globe. Whatever language, whatever tongues, we aim to reach out to each man so that they too may know that God has order in everything that he does. The Lord bless and keep you all. Grace and peace.